Hey, what's going on guys, Yo Creation back again for another Hunter x Hunter versus battle. Before I begin, I would like to thank you all for the support on my last Hunter x Hunter video, which has over 11,000 views. Moving on from hyping myself up, we have a match of the Phantom Troupe versus the Royal Guards. Spoiler warning for the recent chapters, of course. I'm going to quickly summarize the abilities of the Royal Guards since I did so in depth in my Netero versus Royal Guards video. Pito is first up, and she has 3 abilities, being Dr. Blythe, Puppeteering, and Terpsichora. Dr. Blythe is a healing ability that needs the user to stay still, so it's not really going to be used in this fight. But the other 2 are very useful. Puppeteering allows the user to control the body of a deceased person, which depending on how Pito uses it could turn the tide of the battle. Pito's other ability, Terpsichora, is a general stat buff which just makes her stronger and faster, which is obviously going to be useful considering this is a matchup. Yuppie is the next royal on the list, and he has 3 abilities as well which are created just for combat. The first, Metamorphosis, allows him to manipulate his body to make more limbs or enlarge himself. His other ability, Rage Blast, swells up his body and he explodes, although he is vulnerable during his swell period. His last ability, Rage Incarnate, basically just combines both abilities, with him taking a centaur-like form and shooting Rage Blast beams. The last royal, Poof, is not battle-oriented like the other 2, but has very interesting abilities. 2 of his abilities, Cocoon and Body Reconstruction, are not battle-oriented, but the other 2 are. Kinda. Spiritual Message allows him to read the aura flow of people, which allows him to formulate strategies to counter them, along with a bunch of other emotion reading stuff. The ability also allows him to hypnotize average humans, but this likely won't work against experienced Nen users like the Phantom Troupe. His last ability, Beelzebub, allows him to split himself into miniature versions of himself that can even be the size of flies, but the smaller they are, the weaker they are. But they can use all of the same abilities as the main body can. Now that I'm done explaining the Royals' abilities, let's move on to the Troupe's abilities. The Phantom Troupe is a group of elite Nen users. The members I will be discussing include Chrollo, Nobunaga, Phaeton, Maki, Finks, Illumi, Bonolenov, Shizuki, Franklin, Uvogen, Cortopi, Pakunoda, Shalnark, and last but certainly not least, Hisoka. I would start with the leader Chrollo, but he has like a shit ton of abilities and it's way too complicated, so he's going last. First up, we have Nobunaga. He mainly uses a sword and that's it. He has no other abilities that have been shown. He has used a Nen and N before, but he hasn't shown any specific abilities. Although we do know he is one of the stronger members in terms of raw aura in the troupe, since he's always paired up with Uvogen. Moving on, we have Phaeton, everyone's favorite anime e-boy. Phaeton also uses a sword, but thankfully he has a Nen ability called Pain Packer. The ability Pain Packer works by having its user take damage and becoming enraged before using the technique, which after it is used, creates a suit of armor that surrounds him and protects him from the ensuing technique, which is Rising Sun, which literally turns up the heat by turning Phaeton into a literal fucking sun. According to Finks, Phaeton's ability Pain Packer has many variations aside from the one that we have seen, so he may be stronger than we think. Next is Maki, who mainly relies on her immense speed and reflexes to outsmart her opponents. She uses 2 abilities, being Nen Stitches and Nen Threads, which both make use of Nen-like strings to do specific tasks. Nen Stitches could prove useful in battle, but I doubt it considering who they are going up against. So that leaves her with her other ability, Nen Threads, which is just her using Nen Threads to fight, and nothing else special. She may seem basic, but she's relatively strong according to the arm wrestling ranking the troupe has. She is very strong physically, so she shouldn't be underestimated, especially since she is a troupe member, who are all gifted in Nen. Next on the list is Finks, who is one of the strongest members of the troupe, with him having only one ability so far named Ripper's Cyclotron. This ability is very simple. All he does is rotate his arm clockwise, and each time he does, his aura gets stronger and stronger, so theoretically he could kill anyone with enough time, since we have seen no limits to the ability, but that is all theoretical. Aside from his Nen ability, he is shown to be a very strong close combat fighter. Up next is Illumi, who is definitely one of the top 5 strongest troupe members, at least he normally is, but this situation he is not at his best. He has 4 abilities which are named Body Alteration, Hypnotic Spell, Corpse Control, and Needle Peep. These 4 abilities are usually used to control and manipulate weaker people to perform actions to disorient people he may be fighting, manipulate people, or even create distractions. In this versus situation, I don't see him being able to use any of these abilities aside from maybe controlling the dead body of a troupe member, but it is contentious. He is a very strong and powerful aura user on par with pre-death Hisoka, so he is definitely strong but is definitely handicapped in this fight. Next is one of my favorite members, Bonolenov. Why is he one of my favorites, you ask? Just because, okay? Don't ask questions. Anyways, he has 3 abilities, but one has not been used yet, so I will be skipping that one and talk about Battle Cantible Prologue and Battle Cantible Jupiter. The first creates a spear and suit of armor for Bono Lennoff to use, while the other creates a giant ball that looks like Jupiter. In the case of Jupiter, he dances around and creates music, which if heard creates a Jupiter ball that flies at immense speed to crush his target. Just a note, he outright says his attack moves at the speed of sound, which means most of the Phantom Troupe is likely around this level, with the stronger members being far above this. Next up is Best Girl Shizuku, who has only one ability named Blinky, which spawns a giant living vacuum cleaner that sucks up anything that Shizuku considers non-living, like blood or poison, which will be useful against Poof. One of the techniques she uses with her Blinky is absorbing blood from an open wound to drain an individual, which may prove useful. Shizuku is around the bottom in terms of strength, but her ability is quite unique and is useful, especially when dealing with poison users. On to the next troupe member, we have Franklin, who's honestly just one of the most mid-looking characters I've ever seen. Like, he just feels like a mid-tier character. He has one ability called Double Machine Gun, which he just shoots Nen bullets from his finger. This would make him around Bono Lennoff level since bullets are around the speed of sound, and he is one of the more stronger physically troupe members, but he doesn't seem that adept at fighting hand in hand. Next up is Uvigen, who is the physically strongest in the group, and he is built for battle. His only known Nen ability is called Big Bang Impact, which is just a concentration of Nen in his fist, which he then uses to power his punch. Other than that, he's able to catch a bullet in his mouth and tank an anti-tank missile, which is just the coolest when he did so. This puts him far above trash like Franklin. Next up is Troupe, who is not a fighter in the slightest. He is the physical weakest, and his ability only lets him copy materialized inanimate objects up to the size of a building. This could prove useful as a distraction, but he's most likely just death fodder. Next up is Pakunoda, who has 2 abilities that work in conjunction with one another, being Psychometry and Memory Bomb. Psychometry allows her to read the memories of someone she's in physical contact with. She can then use her other ability, Memory Bomb, to implant or take away someone's memories by shooting Nen bullets at someone. She could be interesting to see fight, especially against the ants, since she could remove and implant memories to make one of the ants rebel and join the troupe. But I doubt it, since the Royal Guard have extremely high levels of raw Nen, and they're just physically strong, so I doubt it would work against them. But it would be interesting to see. Up next, we have Shaunlark, who has an ability to control his targets, which is called Black Voice. This won't be useful in this fight, but he can use his other ability, Autopilot Mode, where he sticks an antenna in his own head, which boosts his aura significantly, but he loses consciousness and he goes into Autopilot Mode until he completes his mission. This ability has a harsh backlash, but it won't matter since all that matters is who wins the fight. He won't particularly be amazing, but he is fairly strong user, especially with the buff he gets from Autopilot Mode. Second to last, we have Hisoka, who has 2 abilities. The first is Texture Surprise, which is used to disguise things like wounds or his face with a thin layer of Nen. This can be used to trick opponents as seen in his fight in Heaven's Arena, but his other ability, Bungee Gum, is more suited for battle. Did you know Bungee Gum has the properties of both rubber and gum? Well, thanks to that, it allows him to use his thread-like ability to do many things, like stick to walls, create a weapon, redirect ranged projectiles, and much more. It's very diverse in its capabilities. Aside from his immense amount of Nen and him being on par with Chrollo, he got a Nen after death buff in the manga recently. In the manga, Chrollo was barely able to beat and seemingly kill Hisoka, but Hisoka had set a clause that if he died, his Nen would start his heart and lungs again. Since he came back alive, he has gained a Nen after death buff, where Nen seemingly becomes exponentially more powerful after the death of the user, seen with Pito against Adult Gon, and in the manga it is explained. This would technically make him the strongest in the Phantom Troupe in the current manga. Last but certainly not least is Chrollo, who has the most complicated Nen technique in the whole troupe. He has 2 abilities called Skill Hunter and Double Face. Skill Hunter is a book that saves the Nen skills of people he meets, but only after Chrollo fulfills multiple requirements in under 1 hour, and he can only use one ability at a time, and he has to hold the book in his hand. The last part is counteracted by a second ability, Double Face, which acts as a bookmark of sorts, which allows him to fight freely while using his Skill Hunter ability. He can also flip to another page and use 2 abilities at the same time, but he has to use one hand to hold onto the book again, which is the only downside of this ability. He currently has 6 abilities that we know of, saved in the book. Bear with me because it's going to take a minute to explain. Ability 1 is Indoor Fish. Basically summons Nen fish that eat at you, but you won't feel pain or die until they disappear. Ability 2, Fun Cloth, allows whatever is wrapped in the cloth to shrink. Ability 3, Teleportation, self-explanatory. Ability 4, the sun and moon. Symbols appear on the back of Chrollo's hand, being a sun and a moon. He touches the target with his hand and they explode when they come in contact with the opposite mark. It got strengthened since even after the death of the original user, his after-death Nen was so extremely powerful that it overrided the restrictions in the book. Ability 5, Order Stamp, allows the user to control an inanimate object that has a head and use it like a puppet, although it can't be used on corpses, which was used in tandem with Chrotope's skill in the fight against Hisoka, but lost most of its use since Chrotope died. Ability 6, Covert Hands, is a complicated ability, but was mainly used to blend in with the crowd of puppets in the fight against Hisoka, but would have very little use without Chrotope's skill. Out of all these abilities, Sun and Moon are the clear ones he would use against the ants. Now that I have established their abilities, how would the fight go? Well, first I will be dividing it into two sections, with the first one being the Troupe versus a single Royal Guard. Even without current Hisoka, the Troupe would win against a single royal ant, regardless of which one 9 times out of 10. I do think Pito would prove most troublesome due to her raw speed. Next section is a straight battle between the Troupe and the Royal. This could go in a lot of ways, but if the Royals work together, the Troupe will most likely lose. But they have some chance if they target Poof early and just wear down Yuppie and gang up on Pito. But scaling wise, people like Chrotope, Pakunoda, and Shizuku would die immediately since Yuppie would go for the kill instantly due to his nature. People like Chrollo, Hisoka, and Phaeton would be the strongest and be the main ones combating, while the other ones are mainly supporting. I do believe a powered up Hisoka would be able to hold very well with Pito, since Hisoka considers people on Kite's level not super exciting to fight before his power up, and Kite was at least able to draw blood from Pito, meaning someone like Hisoka, especially with the massive boost, would be able to injure Pito and keep up. Well, that's going to be it for this video. Tell me what you think about it, and tell me how you think the battle would go down in the comments. Make sure to like and subscribe, and see you all next time.